It's almost there.
We are.
Last summer.
He's recording. I'm going to assume Paul is trying some new equipment, so bear with us for a second. All right, I'm just going to do our recording just in case. I think we always do that just as a backup. Okay. All right, go for it.
All right, welcome everybody to the June 25th meeting of the City of Oregon City Public Library Board. In attendance are Cynthia Andrews, Bill Martin, Lisa Oreskovich, and Lori Spinagle, myself, and Greg Williams, and Denise Butcher, the staff. We have two approved absences of Heidi Blackwell, who may be joining us a little bit later. She had a conflicting meeting, and Larry Osborne is not feeling well. So that said, the first order of business is the approval of the minutes from May 28th. Any corrections or additions? The only thing that I'm seeing, and maybe it doesn't need to be there, is that Cynthia was an excused absence.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry, what did you say?
That you weren't there, but it was an excused absence,
yes,
and it's not in the minutes.
All right.
Okay.
We will make sure that.
Yeah, I think that should be there, but
We'll put that in. My apologies for missing that.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, move to accept as modified.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. 1 second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Library Director's report.
Okay, thanks, David. As usual, if there are any questions and anything that was included, I'm happy to entertain them. I will just share briefly. We had a successful Juneteenth event on Saturday. I need to publicly give kudos to the Optimist Club, who definitely walked the walk and talked the talk of being optimist by slinging hot dogs and pouring rain for 3 hours. With a smile on their face the whole time, so that was great. But we were able to pivot. We moved everything inside. We had it at the end of the Oregon Trail Center, which was nice because one of their goals is to start telling other stories of this area, and Juneteenth nicely coincided with that. So we moved everything inside. All told, I think we had between 250 and 300 people attend, which for a very cruddy weather day was great. Gave away lots of books and lots of good feedback from everybody who participated and who attended. The panel discussion went very well, and yeah, it was just a good day. So David,
good.
I saw David there. Thank you very much for showing up. Others may have been there, and I didn't see you, but it was good. So.
Yeah, it was really well done. The spirit of the place really felt welcoming, and the program was great. And it really, if you didn't know that it was supposed to be inside, you would not have felt.
That's good.
It was handled really well.
Well, that's good. I was out of town, so couldn't go, but I was hoping it went well. So
yeah. And Heidi's not here, but I need to give Heidi kudos. She is a member of the committee who helps plan this every year, and she puts in lots of work and lots of great feedback. She and her husband Tori are very, very involved in it. So kudos to Blackwells for all their support and help. But yeah, turned out well. Other than that, do you have anything you'd like to share? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Check out all the new shelves. They really look wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you. We're thrilled and we're pleased as punch.
The capacity increase is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think Blake said about 30 when everything was all said and done, moved around. He's got about 30 new shelves to fill, and he was able to move things around so they're split between fiction and nonfiction. Places that we want to be able to expand.
Okay, any questions or concerns about the report of the stats? No? Great. Any public comment?
Yeah.
No? Okay. One really a discussion that I want to spend some time on, and that's the task force, because the task force has had one meeting and is having its second meeting tomorrow. But we first need to have a nomination of the new LDAC representative since Nick is gone. And I would like to volunteer for that position because I think it's going to be critical going forward that the board, LDAC, and the task force all get coordinated very well. So I don't know if anybody else is interested, please speak up.
I nominate you.
Yes. Seems to me like LDAC and,
I'm overwhelmed.
LDAC and I'd like to are, you know.
I've found to say with all the libraries in Lincoln, it's the first time I've ever heard of anybody saying I actively want to be part of LDAC.
Second that nomination.
And I'm not just nominating you because I don't want it, but I really do appreciate that you are trying to get consistency across the board.
I think it's important.
I want
Right.
to make sure that,
Thank you.
I endorse that.
Thank you. We've had a motion and a second. And any other nominations?
Do we have, Lauren did, okay.
I second it.
Good. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The other great thing is that it's also very good with LDAC, especially with the topic of stuff, is having an unincorporated resident.
Yeah, it turns out, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what happened yesterday at the LDAC meeting. It's interesting. All right, the second one is the Library District Task Force discussion. As I think you know from the last meeting, a new task force was appointed by the county that replaces that monstrous task force that was pre-COVID that sort of imploded when COVID happened. Unfortunately, nobody from Oregon City got appointed to that task force. And there's a rural mayor, an urban mayor, a rural city manager, an urban city manager, a rural librarian. I mean, and so it's well represented, but it turns out that even though Denise and Greg were nominated, they were not, neither were selected. But we plan to attend every meeting. They're public meetings, although there's no testimony from the public. It's basically, so Greg and I attended the first meeting. Greg, do you want to give a brief synopsis and I'll chime in if...
Sure. We put in the packet that they shared at the
Right.
task force did. You know, a lot of it was introductory. Like Dave said, the way they've configured it is that there's basically 4 stakeholder groups, each with 2 representatives, one from more the urban areas, one from the rural areas. I'm fairly pleased. The list of topic areas, of high-level topic areas that this task force is focusing on are the exact same ones that were articulated 5 years ago, because they're still the right things to focus on, in my humble opinion, which are basically what level of service should the library districts and libraries provide. In order to achieve those service levels, what level of funding is required to allow that to happen? And once you have this funding coming in, you're operating as a district, what on the table and kind of ask people what's one thing that you want to see happen or one piece of feedback you have, and a majority of the feedback, I mean, it was all positive. You know, nobody said anything terrible about the current state, other than universal recognition that funding is a huge issue and that funding is not sufficient to be able to go forward where we want to be. So I was very heartened to hear different perspectives. Still, recognizing that yes, funding is a big concern. So yeah, I think there was some education that happened at this meeting. I believe there's going to be more education that happens at the next meeting, because a lot of the participants have not been around the district or have not been as involved in it as some of us have for years and years. So that will be positive. But yeah, I thought it was positive, and even though there was no Oregon City reps there, I keep saying as long as we keep moving in the right direction, that's fine. But yeah, that's the greater good. We want this work to move forward and get us where we need to be.
The other optimistic thing that I agree that I thought it was optimistic is that it really is a short-term effort. This is not going to be something that's going to be ongoing. They want to report by the end of the year, and even perhaps even sooner than that. Commissioner Savas is sort of the representative from the commission, and he's probably one of the more knowledgeable people about libraries.
Yep.
And as you'll hear in the LDAC report, Commissioner Schrader, also, who was a school librarian at one point in one of her iterations, is also quite interested, and that was very encouraging as well. No nobody went down the rabbit holes, and there are plenty of rabbit holes that they could go down. The IGAs, the issue of capital, the issue of boundaries, all of these things will probably come up. But there was I think, a recognition and focus that funding is going to be the key element going forward, which is what I certainly believe for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So what is the report by the end of the year supposed to do?
It's supposed to present recommendations to the board, the library district board, which is synonymous with the county commission. They are the governing body. And then they will take those recommendations and do whatever they want to do with them. I mean, it is recommendations. Unfortunately, the meetings are not being televised, so you can't, or Zoomed. That may change. There's a question as to whether that's doable or not. They're technically not legally governing body public meetings that require quorums and require all that stuff.
I didn't necessarily agree with that.
No, I
wasn't going to contradict
I felt you, but that's, right. So that's what's happening. The next meeting is tomorrow at 1:00 at the one of the county buildings, and are you going to be able to see the office there as well? And I think they're being facilitated by a fairly experienced facilitator. I'm pretty impressed with her ability to move things along and to actually do meeting facilitation, which I did for 30 years. So I was impressed. So that's going on.
Heidi just showed up, so I'm just going to admit Heidi real quick.
So even though they're not being televised, and you're not, so I'm assuming they're opened.
Oh, yes.
That you could go.
Absolutely could go.
I can't go, but
yeah.
you would go.
Yeah, no, you sit in the audience and listen, basically.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Commissioner Savas and Schrader said at the LDAC meeting, not to jump forward, is because a couple of LDAC members did express some concerns that there wasn't a public comment and that it was kind of a small group, and they went to pains, which was honestly the first time I had heard seated county commissioners articulating this to the degree that they did, was that, they certainly realize that if the recommendation comes back, hey, it's time to go out for a new district with a higher rate, there's going to be a whole other public engagement process. And there's going to be plenty of opportunity to assemble those larger stakeholder groups and to have those conversations to get more feedback.
Fundraising.
This current process is really just trying to tee up, some recommendations to the commission, hopefully, which they take forward and say, okay, we've got recommendation that, for example, it's time to go out for more money. So how do we move forward with that?
Nice. Heidi, welcome.
Thanks for joining us. You can hear us okay?
She's muted, so.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
The only item of important business that you missed is that I have been appointed to the LDAC to replace Nick. And I'm thrilled.
And if I may, the other thing, I did share some information just about the Juneteenth event, how that it went well, and I did let the library board know that you and Tori play a huge role in that every year, and we're very, very grateful for your support and everything that you do for that. So take your kudos now that you're here. So. Yeah.
All right, great. So any other questions about the task force? We'll keep you informed. In fact, one of the things we really need to do now is we want to provide feedback to the task force. In this case, it could come through a variety of vehicles. Yeah. Because there's different constituencies.
Right. So the way they have it set up is they've got representatives for each group. So there's representatives from the city managers, representatives from the library directors, representatives from the mayors, and then there's also representatives of the public, which at this phase is really meant to be library boards.
Right.
Now, that kind of feedback, I can't email you all and ask you, hey, what's your feedback to provide to the task force, because that would be a violation of public meetings law. So our goal was to have a discussion to generate, we were thinking bullet points or just kind of, hey, what's the feedback that as a body, you want to make sure this task force hears? You will have that discussion in a public meeting, and then David, having that information, he as the board chair can confidently articulate, this is what my library board feels. This is what they say is important. And, that was our goal for the meeting tonight.
And let me just to introduce that. Let me share some ideas that I have and that Greg and I have discussed it briefly. And they're not that dissimilar from, again, what the charge was and what the issues were raised at the last task force or what you've seen in the packet. My number one thing is funding. I mean, I could care less about any of those other issues. I think we're so underfunded, compared to Multnomah County's at $1.22 per thousand, we're at 37 cents, 39 point whatever. I mean, a big difference there.
And what's Washington County pitching?
Washington County is a little complex.
Right.
They have a component that the county pays a certain amount directly from their general fund. And then they supplement that with a 5-year renewable operating levy. And they actually just yesterday announced, or actually at their meeting tonight, I think, they are planning, when they do the levy is up this year, and they're raising it from 32 cents to 44, 47 cents. They're going up 15 cents per thousand. But they get about, I want to say about either a third or 50% more total funds than we do, because they have that different, both county and a supplemental levy.
Mm-hmm. So one issue to me, and the primary issue certainly is funding. The second issue in my mind is service level. And that is that we have 13 libraries and, spread around the county with a single operating board, and it seems to me there ought to be some consistency if the funding permits it. And the difficulty is that each one of our libraries has different fundings, and so Canby is really struggling right now. Lake Oswego doesn't struggle.
So help me understand what consistency means to you in this context.
Well, to me, it is that a patron should be able to know that the operating hours are the same at all the libraries. I mean, that would be an ideal. I mean, but again, these are at this point ideals.
I'm just laughing because every time I'm like, okay, what time does that like?
Yeah, exactly.
I do that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I'm just taking notes as everybody talks. So this is, we'll finalize this as a group together, but I'm just trying to capture some of the ideas. So.
But that's why I was asking for clarification.
Yep.
So,
those are certainly two of them. I think we need to clarify the IGA, just any of the issues in the past that have been controversial. That is, how can the monies be used? And my recommendation is that the monies can be used anything that supports operating a public library. And if that's capital, it's capital. If it's fixing the HVAC system, that's part of it. It's certainly not filling potholes. And so, but if it can be justified in terms of supporting a public library, then that's what the money can be used for, and we can get out of this craziness that's been debated about that. That's two. Secondly, I think it's reasonable to re-look at boundaries. And I say that somewhat reluctantly because we're going to be a loser in that one because of particularly Canby. But if we can support Canby in a way, because Canby is really struggling with this, assuming the funding happens. I mean, we cannot do any of this unless the funding happens. So that would be another one. I think the other that there could be some mention of the issue around ebooks and audiobooks, which is becoming a national issue now. Pennsylvania and Connecticut have passed laws. I've had a discussion with the state librarian about this, and we're going to be chatting more about it. But just the expense, the expense issue that I think we've discussed before. Those are just some ideas that I have. So, other thoughts?
So when you say adequacy of funding, and you're thinking about the 39, 37, what is that? I mean,
we don't know yet until, and it's going to require probably an outside person coming in and doing an analysis. I'm not even, do you know what a 10-cent increase would generate?
At 39 cents, well, let's call it 40 cents. So 40 cents generates about 20 million a year. So about 5 million. 5 million for 10 cents. So $500,000. million.
And that 39%, is that countywide or is that just Oregon City?
It's countywide. So, and I should say that some of the devil, the details, that
Yeah.
when I say 20 million, it's not distributed evenly. There's a two-part formula that dictates how that, so yes, it's not like we get 1/13 of 20 million.
Which I would recommend, but that's my assumption. And instead, the way it works is the money that's raised from within the Lake Oswego city boundaries, that stays in Lake Oswego, and the unincorporated money gets divided equally. And so Lake Oswego and West Lynn, and then get, because of their higher tax, are much better funded. And interestingly, in the first task force meeting, a couple of people did say they wish that could be looked at again. But as I had a conversation with Tony on Sunday at the Juneteenth thing for a minute, he said there's no way that the city managers and the mayors are going to go or will support a measure that changes that. So it's going to be a hot, if that gets raised, it'll be a real hot button. That equity and funding. So we really don't know.
Oh, just my...
No.
Wouldn't a solution to that be that every library gets some basic, thing that they can count on, and then there are other formulas to put on top of that. That's what the community colleges did several years ago when, PCC had a completely different, funding base than Blue Mountain over in Pendleton, but they wrangle it to the point where everybody gets a certain stable funding out of the tax dollars that are raised at the state level. And then there were various formulas to allocate additional dollars. And it seems to me that it would make sense to have something like that so that every library could have their baseline funding guaranteed, and then beyond that, that has to be negotiated. But I just feel like there are solutions that have been worked out in way bigger venues. And so, it would seem a good idea to really be open and look at what other places are doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. One other issue that was raised that I meant to mention was allocated expenses. There is some concern that or some fears that cities are taking advantage of the libraries by overcharging them for various things. And we saw a very big increase in allocated expenses this year, but they were reasonable. I mean, we use human resources, we use communication, we use data management, we use those things.
Are other cities consistent with Oregon cities?
No, everybody's doing it differently.
And if I may, and that's usual in cities, right? I mean, every city is going to have potentially have a different basis. So I think, to me, the important thing is, when we discuss this at LDAC, it's, Denise and I, we work very hard to bring you guys information about the budget and to make sure that you're engaged in it. Is that those discussions of whether or not a city is doing it right, those belong at the local level. Right. That's not something LDAC doesn't necessarily need to comment or tell Oregon City, hey, this is how you should be doing your allocated costs. And I know that's something that I know the mayors and the city managers feel as well. But I value and appreciate the work that this board does, and I think you're capable. The local library boards are capable of being the ones to look at, hey, how is the city working with their library with those dollars or these and stuff.
And we can negotiate with the city. I mean, we've had discussions, the last couple of biennia, and got changes as a result, So, I mean, it stays local. It was dealt with locally, and it was dealt with fairly, it seems to me. So, other concerns, thoughts? There's a big concern overall about delivering service to unincorporated county residents. I know it's one of our strategic planning objectives, and I shared that at the LDAC meeting. We take it seriously. Two of us, and the actual leadership of the board, live in unincorporated Clackamas County. But that's another one that I think we ought to mention, that we believe strongly that we are responsible for delivering is equivalent service as we can to city and unincorporated residents. there are some hot button issues. I had a meeting, just a slight aside here, but I want to share this with you, with the mayor of Gladstone, Milwaukee, and our mayor, Denise. We met at the new Gladstone Library, which is quite a lovely little building, incidentally, right in downtown Gladstone. So there is a downtown Gladstone. And the mayor of Milwaukee was very concerned about her belief that the city of Milwaukee residents are paying for their library building, which they are through a bond measure, and the unincorporated residents who are part of their sub-district of the library district really are not contributing to that building fund, which is true. And that is because of the way they went out for the bond. And I think they made a mistake in doing it the way they did. But that could be corrected if the new rate is high enough. They could go literally back to the bond people and say, look, we're going to substitute the city monies for this district money, which now will cover that, and they can fix that problem. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts here that are going to be played out either in the task force or subsequently with the county commission. And each little library's got their own little tweaks and concerns that are going to come forward. So share that.
But you can get that granularity from the allocation of new revenue?
Yeah.
Say Milwaukee would get an extra.
No, they wouldn't get an extra. Just if in fact the rate is high enough, they would have enough of that revenue that comes from the unincorporated area to contribute to the bond payments, basically.
And with revenue without the fear that somebody's going to come back and say you can't use that for county.
Exactly. That's the other piece.
But let's say, is Milwaukee's circulation among their unincorporated population different from
you mean the mix?
Yeah.
Each one's a little different, but they've got a pretty sizable unincorporated one as well.
They're about 50-50.
Yeah.
I think it's closer to 50-50 for Milwaukee.
So, I mean, it's a real concern. And instead of setting up a special tax district, they just passed it through the city. And that was, I think, that mistake they made, but it's history.
Lesson learned. I remember that there was so much dissension around all of that when it was happening, you know?
Yeah. I think, having been around for a long time, and you'll hear some of at LDAC, Grover, and there are some who feel that when the county decided to get out of the library business, when the district formed, that was the wrong decision because they do, some unincorporated residents in some areas feel like, we got turned over to the city and the city doesn't do anything for us. Mm-hmm. We try very hard here to not make that happen, but I know that's also a fear that comes through.
Years ago, were any rural libraries closed? Any little small ones?
They weren't closed. So the one the county operated was Woodland, was run by the county. Oak Lodge, which is still run by the county, and what became the Sunnyside Library in Happy Valley used to be in the town center, in the Clackamas Town Center Mall, for anybody who's been here a while. That was also run by the county. So those were the three branches that the county ran to try to better serve unincorporated populations in those three areas. And when the district was proposed, the county said, we don't have the funding to continue to operate those libraries. So if this district passes, the plan is Town Center will move into Happy Valley, and then Happy Valley takes it over. Woodland will be run by City of Sandy, and those two things happened. And then Oak Lodge was supposed to go to Gladstone. They were supposed to combine and have a single large library in Gladstone to serve both those service areas. But that never happened.
No, in fact, there'll be two new libraries. One in Gladstone that's just opened in an Oak Lodge. Brand new library will be opening in the next few months. Both run by the county.
Yeah. Yep. And just when we're talking about if we make, if that equity of service gets there, I like that. I like hearing, and I talked to some other directors about this. There are different challenges to serving the unincorporated population, right? It's and primarily a big chunk, some of it is just geographic dispersal. And I like to use the example, I can serve 200 people in the city of Oregon City within a couple block radius, and in some areas of unincorporated, that's miles. It's a very different equation of how you reach a similar amount of people. So I know some of the stakeholders, when they're talking about, the unincorporated residents, there are different strategies we can employ. And I think we do a really good job of recognizing that. But I think that is something that will come up. And that's a way to have the conversation. Yes, it's a little harder to sometimes serve unincorporated, but we can be creative about it and do it in an equitable fashion if it's not exactly 100% the same. Like building another branch because we don't have funding shortage.
Any other concerns, thoughts that we want to contribute to this process?
Well, a question though.
Yeah.
What does the library district have to do with the emerging atmosphere of censorship and book removal? And do we, as a district, have any consensus around those issues? And should they?
That's a great question.
No, so that gets to the, and I don't think there's a lot of support for it. In Oregon, there are two different types of library districts you can have. You can have the one that we have, which is the governing body is the county commission. You can have another type where your governing body is elected, and where there would actually be every 4 years, you would vote for library commissioners. That's how Deschutes County does it. In that situation, you probably have a much more active governing body who would make decisions about, here's how we handle challenges. Under our current one, it's been delegated to the cities. So that's why we spend a lot of time, for example, here working on our collection development policy and what makes sense for our community as to how we're going to handle book challenges. I think there's a lot of support for that local control model. I think if the suggestion came up to move to a different type of district where perhaps you would have one governing body hearing challenges and making decisions that were binding on Estacada and Oregon City and West Lynn, you might get some pushback from other stakeholders. Would be my
Sure, that I don't think there's going to be a consensus around shifting the form based on what I've heard to date. One question I had is, if you had that new thing, who would do the central services? And Greg appropriately said they'd probably have to contract with the county anyway, because the infrastructure is there. And so I think it would get messy, frankly. And there is certainly a lot of local pride and sense of ownership and desire to govern. And I think if we tinker with that, nothing will pass. That'll become the issue rather than
the county level's never been policy making. Correct. Their financial structure, but not fine grain.
Well, other than the negotiated IGA and the contract that has policy.
Yeah, but not acquisition.
Correct.
Or staff.
I'm trying not to give the director perspective. Your discussion. And I have a unique perspective, having been up there and now down here. I will say that one of the questions we get a lot is, well, Washington County did this. Why can't we? And they're similar to the way we are, because they're independent libraries who get together, and they do have a different governance structure. To be very brief, they have a governance structure where there are some city managers who sit at the table. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot easier to have conversations about, boy, wouldn't it be great if we all decided to do the same thing, and you have a body that can say, yes, make it so. Mm-hmm. Here in Clackamas County, we do not. And it's really so RFID is the big example. We've been trying to get RFID done for 20 years. By the time we actually got it done, and it's because in our governance, there was nobody who could say, you will do this. We had to wait for that perfect storm, 13 different cities, saying, okay, now is the time. Let's try to figure out how we move forward with this. I personally think there could, and Nick always agreed with me, so Nick would bring this up. There are certain things that as a district, we do not do a great job of making efficient use of resources. Like, for example, and some of the directors would be saying this, James Patterson. We all know that every single library, the minute a new James Patterson book comes out, we're all going to buy it. We have historical data which shows we probably know how many copies we should buy. We've got 13 different selectors placing 13 different orders for, individual things of James Patterson. To me, that's ridiculous. It would be so much more efficient if we just said, oh, boy, here's all the hot stuff that we all know we're going to buy. Let's have one centralized, let's have the county purchase those centrally, and then we'll just pay them back. And we will still have so much local control over everything else, over our programs, over the 20% of the collection that is unique to us, right? And there does not exist a structure within LINC to actually make that happen right now.
A little bit like an ESD approval.
Yeah.
Which gives the local schools a lot of control, but that centralized services provision is saving the schools a lot of money.
Yes. So I think there's a good opportunity to discuss the role of the centralized presence, within LINC, and especially if it's positioned as we need to achieve some economies of scale, especially if we're going to go out and ask people for more money. I've always said we need to demonstrate that we're making really good use of the money we're already asking for. And I think there are some areas that we could show a commitment to stretching that dollar as far as we can.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for letting me go off on my head.
Any thoughts? Okay. So we'll collect those, and
Hey, would you mind if we just kind of go?
No,
do a temperature check.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what I believe I've heard. So my plan is we'll just go one by one through this and just make sure that we've got kind of down. So it sounds like everybody agrees that a good thing for us, a good point of feedback that this library board feels strongly about is ensuring adequacy of funding for library services countywide.
Did you have further down Cynthia's idea of the base within that?
Yeah, so we have consistency of service levels, or
She was
the point that Cynthia raised.
the community college.
oh yes, sorry, yes. So the distribution formula.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. Okay. And I think there's enough trust with David here that we're getting the basics down, and we can. We feel pretty confident about delaying the essence of this. Okay, so ensure adequate funding for library services countywide.
And the reason I asked you the question I did about what would that look like when you say adequacy, my concern is always that, there's always that balance that we try about, well, how much do we need and how much do we think will pass, right? And
Sure.
I would love for us to actually be realistic about what we need.
Yes.
Yeah. And at least start there, right? So
Right. Well, there are a set of so that I really got. What are they? They're standards. There are a set of standards that the
Oregon Library Association,
the OLA has established, and in fact, they have been included in the intergovernmental agreements by reference. And in order to do that, or in fact, Oregon City just barely did that this year, didn't we? We met all the standards.
Well,
in terms of funding.
Well, in terms of staffing, and those standards are in the IGA, but they're not standards that the OLA has anymore. OLA has moved on to different standards, and the IGA still uses those standards from 2007. So.
Well, because I just remember you had said, Greg, that it had not been raised in a number of years. So if you were looking at what the rate is and inflation, even just starting with right? If we had been raising it all along, we would be here.
Yes.
And that analysis will happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe what will happen when we talked about the task force last time around, which I'm hoping they're going to do as they move on, is getting a consultant in. That's what they did the last time when the district passes. So they got a consultant in to kind of take a, get some information from stakeholders, but also look at the library landscape and like, what do libraries do? What are they there to serve? What level of service do they need to provide? And here's our best guess of what level of funding is required to do that, both operations and capital. So, all right. So ensure adequacy. So we got that. I think if it's okay, I'm going to put some sub bullets on there. So I am both paraphrasing and trying to get it into a state which I think will have the best chance of being heard. So be open to discussions about equity / alternates. So does that capture that feedback? Or?
I just think we should be open.
Yes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's the key. I think positioning it as just be open to it, have the conversation.
Because it took the colleges years to get to changes that needed to be made, but we finally got there just by keeping on, bringing it back as a discussion. Yeah. We need to change this. We need to change this. What's fair? What's equitable? What's doable? What's fundable?
I'm going to note to kind of compare that with the experience and history of the community colleges.
Yeah, with that idea that she shared about the base, everybody starts
with the
base.
minimal funding.
Minimum.
And not to get too. It will be a very interesting conversation with the city managers because I can tell you I am almost certain that there is no way that you're ever going to get to a. I think that base is going to have to be the city assessed value, right? I don't think there's any way where Lake Oswego is going to say, I'm picking on Lake Oswego, but you could say, fill in the name of the city here that, taxes raised by a property in my city are now going to Milan. I think that's just going to be a non-starter, but perhaps that city portion is that base, and then the stuff above that is what you talk about.
The colleges have that same issue. I mean, a PCC has a completely different base than Blue Mountain or Treasure Valley.
Yeah.
So that was a sticking point.
Maybe at some point I can pick your brain about how that works.
I could probably turn you over to somebody who knows all the
That would be
details.
great. I think that would be really helpful in the discussion. Maybe that's something we can forward on.
Well,
I think
we
that's a
learn
great
from
idea.
other areas that other states, other parts of the state that are facing these same issues.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
My point with that is that if this is a county district, then every resident of the county should get the funding equalized. But the way it's been set up, that's just not the case.
Yeah. And we talked about the way that, part of it is the fact that you have their city libraries, right? That's what the district was based on. It was never like Multnomah, where you strategically said, okay, we've got this, we're going to ignore, some of these boundaries, and we're just going to put the libraries where it makes sense. So we don't have that luxury. Okay. All right, so ensure adequacy of funding for library services countywide, be open to discussions about equity, alternate formulas for distribution of funds, seeing college history.
I'd like to add one thing to that front.
Yep.
I think we ought to say for a minimum of 10 years into the future. I mean, I think we ought to, sort of put, because one of the issues because of Oregon tax law is that every year you go by, you lose money. you just do because things can only go up 3%. And we know that benefits and utilities and everything else are going up.
Is it Oregon law or something that the tax levies have to be fixed and not indexed at all?
It was yes. It is.
Yes. The option that we would have here is the trade-off. So our district is permanent, right? Once it's passed, it doesn't have to go away.
Yes.
But that 39 cents is frozen. You could go to what Washington County does, and you could do a 5-year serial levy, which every 5 years, you're going back out to voters, and that you can increase. The risk is that one of the 5-year cycles, it doesn't pass, and then you close libraries. So when the district passed, they had that discussion, and they felt the permanence was much more important.
That's another important point, that if we go out for, or I think we're going to say when we go out for a new levy, if it fails, nothing changes.
Yeah.
The existing situation, the existing levy and structure stays in place as a baseline. It just stays in place. It's as if the election never happened.
Yeah, and that's what they did that with North Clackamas Parks and Rec District. And yeah. Okay, adequate for at least 10 years. On the funding, I'm going to move, I think is what I heard, that it's acceptable to use district funds on what's needed to support the local libraries, be that operations or be that capital, that. And we've had years, that's not that clear. I don't think I'm going out on a limb and saying that
You're mentioning district funds in your sentence.
Get that language cleared up and the understanding cleared up so we don't have to talk about it anymore.
A lot more talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we got, okay, that was use of funds. I'm going to take that there. All right. EG loan and capital. I mean, allocated costs are part of operations.
Yeah,
So,
but I think the other thing there, savings support.
yeah.
David, when you were talking about the ebooks and audiobooks, help me understand what specifically you were thinking about there.
But just that I just think raising that issue and making sure that folks understand the pressure that's putting on public libraries just gets highlighted. I don't think anything is going to change as a result of this.
Okay.
In fact, Connecticut in passing this law said it will not go into effect until at least 4 other states do what they've done, because they have no leverage with the publishing industry.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to take a California, New York to have that kind of impact. So it's more a consciousness of it.
Okay.
And to make sure that the public understands that, those are 40 times the cost to have an ebook or an audiobook compared to a hard book.
Yeah,
I was shocked.
It's shocking.
I don't know how many people
Nobody.
have a clue.
Yeah.
It is one of those things that it's the worst, that's secret.
Yeah. And it's an audio, and it's an electronic file, and they make you queue up.
Right.
I mean, it's not, everybody in the district can have it simultaneously, practically. I mean, there's no technology issue related to that.
Is that where there's only a certain number of uses?
Yeah.
I think
Well, it's either numbers of uses, but also that they can only go out one at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No. Good point.
So I put that awareness of impact of ebook pricing and licensing on both library budgets and
access.
Yeah, that's good.
patron access. Yeah. I strongly heard consistency of service levels.
Yep.
Yes.
Linked by. So it's fun. This is something we've talked about years and years and years, and it would be amazing if we could get there.
Doesn't it depend so much on staffing?
Yeah, it depends on staffing. I mean, honestly, it depends on staffing. Some of it probably depends on every city's got a different union contract, right? And so what might be possible, to schedule somebody in one place might not be possible in another. But I think maybe.
I think that's right.
And I could, but I'll try not to put words in your mouth. I will say the current IGA does say that we strive towards consistency, and I would say sometimes we do really great, and sometimes we don't. So I'm happy putting strive towards greater consistency on service level. We'll bring you some information in a future meeting, but we're dealing with in the district now overdue fund compliments again after we thought we had everybody. Well, everybody has a goal of eliminating them, but it's not feasible right now. But we have always taken the approach that until we can all do it, none of us are going to do it now. Looks like that might change. I'll bring you some more information next month, but yeah, I mean, we know the more consistent we can be, the better it is, better experience it is for all of our citizens. Strive towards greater consistency. Are there any other? And I can think of lots of examples of service consistency of service level. If there's anything that you guys,
for instance, polls, in versus out, parity, and it may not be worth bringing up to this level, but it's a stat that I always look at.
Yeah.
Are we being good neighbors?
Yes. And it is a funding. I mean, a big portion of it is a funding.
Yeah, and selection of what you acquire.
Yeah.
You hope for the beach romances, or do you hope for the good stuff?
Yeah.
I think there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Good stuff is very personal.
It's a very subjective.
It's not all about the stars out there, then.
Well, yes. But I will say, one of the good things about the way the district runs now is it used to be weighted because funding was based on circulation. Like the more you checked out, the more money you got every year. And so that incentivized libraries to spend all their money on the hot item today and buy 30 copies of the new thing. And so that's all your collection was things that have been published in the last couple of years that after 6 months nobody cares about.
It was an airport show.
Yes, right.
Yeah. That's what was incentivized. We finally got away from that, which is good. All right. Okay, so business examples. Let's see if operating consistent. How about consistent hold ratio targets?
Yeah.
And for agriculture.
Acquisition selection.
Yeah, I'm trying to wordsmith so it's not to. There are some. Everybody in the district, and myself, we prize our independence, right? So I think what we're trying to get at is at least for me, it's that consistency with an eye towards economies of scale and efficiencies, right?
And increasing diversity of collection.
And, how about more cooperative acquisition, selection processes to increase efficiency and diversity of collection?
Good.
Something like that? Is that
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody feels I'm putting words
You speak library, and so it's important to get library speak out there.
Well, I've got my representatives, right? I've got my director's representatives. So we really want this to be your feedback to your representatives. Okay.
Phrases sell, so use them.
All right. So we got ebooks up there already. All right, so acceptable to relook at boundaries, dependent on funding level increasing.
Right.
Okay,
That's right.
yeah, and I think I would suggest that the other position that the city has always taken, and Nick would always relay at LDAC, is we're also open to looking at boundaries as long as it's holistic, right? It's not just, well, by looking at boundaries, we're going to look at Canby ordinances. You know, it's we have to take a look at the district as a whole, is what makes sense for everybody. So if you want to have does that still reflect the board's? Okay. Must be a holistic discussion there. Okay.
Six must. Or make it worse.
All right. I very much appreciate having local oversight of funding. So, oversight and governance. Yeah. Policies. Good.
Yeah.
And equity service to unincorporated residents in library service area.
We can give some examples here, but, you know, mobile services, libraries by mail.
Yeah, maybe renting. That's equity.
Enhance.
I'm just trying to get that idea that it's not a one size fits all, right? What's going to work for city rent? You may try something different.
And one of the things that we didn't mention, and I think I'd like to have it in there, and that is improving coordination between public libraries and public education. And that could be.
Have any of the other cities done if you have cards for kids?
And local schools, not yet. I believe I haven't had a chance to talk to my director Sandy. I believe Sandy was going to be the next one to do it, and I know Milwaukee was very interested, but I'm not sure where they are. All right, so improving coordination between public libraries and local public schools / school districts. Mm-hmm. So does that capture what you're saying? And is that something that the entire board feels? I can tell you, the directors feel very same way. Like everything is boundaries are artificial. So sometimes it's a little.
Well, it also goes back to funding because that requires staffing, and so funding is really, as you said at the beginning, it's just like the root of it all. So,
well, based on that here, I'm going to bold this.
Yeah.
So there. There you go. Okay.
Well done. Okay. Anything else? No. All right, and just to make sure, so now David and I relayed these concepts on behalf of the board. Everybody, at whatever opportunity we might have throughout this process, everybody's comfortable with that. And okay. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And we can certainly talk about these more. Just,
And we'll bring
we
back,
have to do it. Yes.
we will bring back to every board meeting anything that's controversial, and just review where we are. Because the plan is for the task force meet at least 3 or 4 times this summer. So at each of the next the board meetings, we'll bring back.
It would be helpful as you talk with us, as you bring back information, that if we were to develop sort of like, what is our response as a group? Because we all belong to different groups throughout the county, throughout our communities, and we're in position oftentimes to send a message or to reflect a message. We should have some consistency about what that message is, about whatever the issue is, so that if we're in lucky, at some kind of meeting, as I was just the other day, and, and these kinds of things come up, as they often do, then what is it that this board really wants to say about that? So that we're good messengers into the community about these issues to other groups.
And that's going to become critical if there is a new funding measure
Yep.
forward. It's going to be absolutely critical.
And Dave and I were meeting with Tony and Mayor McGriff next week. And I also think it's important that regardless of who is speaking from Oregon City, that we're speaking with.
So we'll share this.
We'll share this.
This with them. See if there's anything they think is.
Yeah. I think most of this
it's helpful for us to have consensus of messaging.
Yeah.
Right.
As a group.
Yeah, I agree.
And the directors feel very strongly the same way. And when it's time for us to go out, part of our strategic plan that we put together does include that. We need to tell our story in a very consistent, very focused way. And everybody throughout the county knows here's what the libraries do for you. This is why we are asking for more funding, and this is what it's going to do for you.
I'm involved in resurrecting the South End Neighborhood Association, and we get all the NAs get guest speakers from planning or DPW or the police, and we could get into that rotation types of the library. So I'll do it for mine.
All right. Yes, that'd be great. And I am always willing and available to. I will heed the call. So
NAs shouldn't be off our radar screen.
No, they're not all. And and same with the county CPOs that are in our service area. We try to get that equivalent from the county. Yeah.
Oh, you have unincorporated neighborhood associations?
They're called CPOs.
Yeah.
Yes, citizen planning organizations.
Yes.
Oh.
Like Beaver Creek has one.
Right.
I said to this guy, Greg, last time that when you go out to Beaver Creek again, I should go because I'm supposed to be representing them. So I need to know what people are thinking and saying. So,
Do the CPOs get a handout from the city?
No,
It's county. Do they get a budget for postcards?
Then they get some support from the county's public and government affairs office. I don't know exactly.
Publicized meeting or something.
Yeah. And some are fairly robust, and they were all originated in the same land use, laws that were passed. So and we try to get out to see if we can get it again. Yeah.
Okay. So we move on.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I will include this in our next month's packet so you can see everything. But thank you. This is really helpful, and I feel very confident that we can speak to the library.
All right, so we'll move to communications. I'll start with LDAC. We had an LDAC meeting yesterday. I guess it was yesterday or Monday, a couple of days ago. The first one in forever. And I found it very interesting. The first one that I've attended now that I'll be a member of is actually Maple Civic. And it's representatives from all around the district, and they have to review an annual library plan, which is due supposedly at the end of June, and that's going to be happening. And they make recommendations to the board of commissioners.
Yeah, it's more not recommendations. If they have any concerns with anything, they relay those to the commission.
And this has been a committee that has gone down rabbit holes. I mean, the issue with boundaries, the issue of capital use, the issue of allocated costs really froze. They weren't able to get anything done. And poor Nick really banged his head against the wall for 8 years related to this. And so it was really interesting to hear going around the room, and I heard a little bit of that. I mean, there are some people that have really strong senses of how to do outreach to unincorporated areas that we're not getting feedback enough from those folks, and we need to communicate with them sort of on a daily basis, and it was getting a little tedious actually for part of it. But that's going to continue. We don't quite know how they're going to be involved with, they're represented on the task force. And so that's probably the vehicle. It's not going to go back to LDAC and then go to the commission to the task force. Yeah. So any other insights from LDAC yesterday?
No, the annual progress reports,
Right.
Those are in the IGA and the district of forms. It says that libraries report if they on their use of funds. Like the IGA says, with these funds, you're supposed to achieve these things. And so that's the goal of the annual progress report. And yes, over time, it has become more information is asked by LDAC. A lot of it is what we already provide to the state every year, part of our annual report to the state. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible to collect that information and transmit it. Yeah, sometimes it does. Transparency is good, but then it also helps people go down rabbit holes. So, yeah.
And those are big open meetings, and anybody can speak. And these could be. So, but I think the task force is being run very much tighter, and that's a good thing. So, okay, the foundation.
Well, we are it's a work in progress right now. We're going to be kicking off a fundraising campaign to raise a significant amount of money in support of outreach, which would include the outreach van, book lockers, something like the book bag, book bikes, activities, whatever, but primarily focusing on the outreach vehicle and the book lockers. And so Karen Martini and Greg are working on that as we speak, and we'll bring back more details maybe next meeting or the next one following, because they're still in discussion about it. So, we had a theme, and we're looking for additional partners who can partner with us on this effort, and one of the good things that's happened is that we've adopted a new donor database, and we have a couple of people that are working on the details of that, and that's going to be very helpful because previously all those things had to be entered by hand, like Joe Smith, donated this amount, and did we send him a thank you note or did we not, and is he going to do it again or whatever? And so the database will really help us pull data out and put data in. And it doesn't depend on a dedicated individual to do that, but the program will really help us. And it's pretty cheap, actually. And so we're looking forward to better use of the database, donor database, and adding to the database. So we're not meeting this month, so next month's report might be a little sketchy, but we'll see.
Speaking of which, just one point of information, which Greg, I don't think we've shared with the board the fact that the state has stopped the grant program.
Oh, yeah, I thought we did.
Did we?
I heard about it.
Okay, just
tell me.
Just in case, yes. So with all of, we had applied for a $50,000 grant through called the Library Services and Technology Act. And that is funded at the federal level, 2 states. And the short version is with all of the craziness that's been going on at the federal level, the state library is concerned about having funds just to pay staff, in the next few years, and so they have elected they are discontinuing the competitive grant program. So we will not be getting that money. It's not a showstopper. Right. It's just we'll have to figure out. I'm confident we will find the money elsewhere. I'm waiting to after that. Yeah.
Just that funding source. Yeah.
Yes. So, and all the libraries, we all
have the Fed decided anything on that money, or the state's just trying to move proactively the state libraries so that we don't get all caught out?
The IMLS has sent to the state library letters saying you will be getting your money. None of the cash has actually shown up, and my understanding is that it's almost impossible to get a hold of somebody in the Treasury Department to actually ask the question, hey, when is the money going to
They've all
come?
been fired.
Basically, that's it.
Seriously.
So they've gotten confirmation that they're getting money that was appropriated in this year's budget, as well as next year's budget, because that was extended by continuing resolution, when they did the last time around. But beyond that, in the budget that they're talking about now with the big beautiful bill, there's nothing in there for IML. So we do not know. The state library does not know what the fate of IMLS or funding is past next budget year, which was done by continuing resolution, which is scary.
Yeah. All right, so Oz is not here. Do you want to speak to the Friends?
Yeah, the Friends, at our last meeting, they approved money for Seed Library to augment what we're able to do for our Seed Library program, which is great. And also they renewed some funding they have been providing to help us with art programming and creative kit supplies. So that's fantastic. We're very grateful to them. They got so much great energy in the Friends group now. So they added a new board member. They are working on building some partnerships, potentially with some local businesses to have little Friends shelves, like the Watershed Cafe or other places like that. And they recently signed up for a new another service that they can just unused inventory or stuff is not selling, they scan the barcode and then they can send it off and get money for it. And this new vendor is paying them more, paying them immediately, and buying a lot more than the previous vendor has. So they're doing great.
Yeah, it's a great service. Yep. Teens.
Yeah, so they haven't met yet this month. They have their last meeting of the season on Sunday, and then they'll start back up again in the fall since they're almost in their school year.
I don't think has anything happened with that?
I have made contact with
Good.
Jen.
Yeah.
Yes, I made contact. She was talking about recreating more. That's all I have.
Very nice. Anything else for the good of the cause? No? Okay. That said, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, is there, are you
Good night.